Welcome, dear subscribers and curious listeners of my channel. The magical world created by J.K. Rowling is filled with mysterious artifacts of immense power. Some of them grant immortality, others defy the very laws of time and space. In the wrong or unskilled hands, such items can lead to catastrophe. Today, I'll tell you about the most powerful and dangerous magical artifacts in the Harry Potter universe. Enjoy the video. Number 1. The Time Turner, perhaps the most dangerous and controversial artifact in the magical world. The Time Turner allows one to travel into the past, and even a small change can alter the course of history. In The Prisoner of Azkaban, Hermione used it to attend multiple classes and to save Sirius Black's life. It seemed harmless enough. But later, in The Cursed Child, an upgraded Time Turner appeared, capable of sending people through time, even for just 5 minutes. It became the center of a chain of catastrophic events that threatened the future itself. The fact that such an artifact was entrusted to a schoolgirl remains a glaring mystery and a troubling failure of magical regulation. Number 2. The Elder Wand. This isn't just a wand, it's a symbol of ultimate power. One of the 3 Deathly Hallows, the Elder Wand is considered the most powerful wand in the world. Its history is soaked in blood. Each of its owners either killed the previous one or was killed in turn. It doesn't care for morality or justice, only power. That's why Harry Potter, after gaining control of it, chose to reject its power and returned it to Dumbledore's grave in the book. In the film, he breaks it in half, a symbolic but controversial gesture. Number 3. The Invisibility Cloak. Many magical objects can hide someone from sight, but Harry Potter's cloak is unique. As one of the Deathly Hallows, it never loses its power and makes the wearer truly invisible. It cannot be detected by normal spells or most magical devices. Very few exceptions exist, such as the Marauder's map and Mad-Eye Moody's magical eye. The cloak was passed down through the Potter family for generations and became a symbol of Harry's special destiny. Number 4. The Philosopher's Stone. Created by the legendary alchemist Nicolas Flamel, this stone is the object of every seeker of immortality and wealth. It can turn any metal into gold and produce the elixir of life. Such an artifact naturally becomes a target for dark forces. Voldemort sought to claim it to regain his body and power, but was stopped by Harry. Eventually, Flamel and his wife agreed to destroy the stone, understanding just how dangerous it could be in the wrong hands. Number 6. The Marauder's map. At first glance, just an old piece of parchment. But say the words, "I solemnly swear that I am up to no good," and it springs to life, revealing all of Hogwarts, including hidden passages and the location of every person inside. Created by 4 friends, Moody, Remus Lupin, Padfoot, Sirius Black, Prongs, James Potter, and Wormtail, Peter Pettigrew, the map became an invaluable tool for Harry. One must realize how dangerous this map could be if it fell into the wrong hands. Imagine the harm Death Eaters could have done with such a powerful artifact. Number 7. The Resurrection Stone. The 3rd Deathly Hallow, capable of bringing back the dead, but not quite. The stone summons spirits, ghostly figures that belong to neither the world of the living nor the dead. Harry used it before walking to his certain death in the Forbidden Forest. The spirits of his parents, godfather and teacher gave him the courage to go on. Afterward, Harry dropped the stone on the forest floor, and it was lost among the leaves. Did it remain there forever? Or will someone one day find it again? Number 8. The pensieve. The pensieve looked like a stone basin filled with silver mist, but when a wizard leaned in, they didn't see their reflection. They fell into memory. Real memory, not imagination or story. The thoughts poured into the liquid were exact, alive, and undeniable. Albus Dumbledore used it often to clear his mind, to study details, to revisit pain without letting it consume him. Harry once fell into one by accident. He found himself watching his father tease young Severus Snape by the Black Lake. It shattered his image of James. Later, Dumbledore used the pensieve to show Harry the life of Tom Riddle, how he charmed Slughorn, how he asked about Horcruxes. Each memory built a picture, sharp and cold, but it wasn't until Snape gave Harry his final thoughts that the truth hit like a curse. Lily, always. "Look at me," Snape whispered with his last breath. And through the pensieve, Harry finally understood. In the wrong hands, the pensieve could be a weapon. It revealed truths meant to stay buried, secrets no one was ready to face. But in Dumbledore's hands, it became a tool. In Snape's hands, it became a confession. In Harry's hands, it became a path to sacrifice. The pensieve didn't lie. It showed things as they were, whether you wanted to see them or not. Number 9. The Mirror of Erised. The Mirror of Erised stood tall and silent in an abandoned classroom. Covered in dust, framed with ancient carvings, it looked forgotten. But the moment Harry stepped in front of it, everything changed. He saw not himself, but his parents, James and Lily, smiling back at him. His heart stopped. They didn't move or speak, but they were there, whole, alive. For Harry, it was magic deeper than spells. "I show not your face, but your heart's desire," the inscription read. Ron saw something else. He stood taller, older, holding the Quidditch cup. A prefect badge gleamed on his robes. He grinned at his reflection, soaking in the pride he always dreamed of. The mirror didn't lie. It whispered truths people buried deep. But those truths could trap you. Dumbledore warned Harry, "It does not do to dwell on dreams and forget to live." That wasn't just advice. It was a lifeline. Many wizards had wasted away in front of that glass, hoping, watching, waiting for what could never be. That's why Dumbledore moved the mirror. He knew temptation had weight. Harry only saw it again when the Sorcerer's Stone needed guarding, but the lesson stayed with him. The mirror didn't offer the future, it offered longing. And longing, unchecked, was its own kind of curse. Number 10. The Sword of Gryffindor. The Sword of Gryffindor was forged by goblins. Not just any goblins, by Ragnarok I, their greatest king and metalworker. It gleamed with rubies and ancient enchantments. But its true power lay deeper. The sword absorbed what made it stronger. When Harry killed the basilisk in the Chamber of Secrets, its venom soaked into the blade. From that moment on, it could destroy Horcruxes, objects thought to be nearly indestructible. The sword didn't belong to a person. It belonged to an idea. It appeared only to those who were true Gryffindors at heart. When Harry pulled it from the sorting hat at age 12, Dumbledore said, "Only a true Gryffindor could have pulled that out of the hat." Years later, it came to Neville Longbottom in the Battle of Hogwarts, allowing him to kill Nagini. The sword didn't ask permission, it chose. During the Second Wizarding War, Severus Snape hid the real sword deep in the Forest of Dean. It was a quiet act of rebellion. He placed it in a frozen lake, knowing Harry would find it when he was ready. The moment was brutal, icy water, desperation, but the sword appeared, waiting, watching. It was never just a weapon, it was a test. And only the brave could pass. Number 11. Floo powder. Floo powder looked like dusty grey ash, harmless, messy, almost silly, but when thrown into a fireplace with the right word, it turned flames green and swallowed you whole. That was the magic. It didn't just send you through fire, it sent you through space. Witches and wizards used it every day. One pinch, one name, one breath, and you were gone. But it wasn't foolproof. Say the wrong place, even slightly, and the powder would punish you. Harry learned that the hard way. He stepped into the Weasleys' fire, gripped the powder, and shouted, "Diagon Alley!" But nerves twisted his voice. It came out rushed and muddled. "Diagonally!" The fire obeyed, just not as intended. He crashed out in the dark, dusty interior of Borgin and Burke's, a shop filled with cursed objects and whispering shadows. The shop reeked of danger, Death Eater masks, blood-stained instruments, a hand of glory. Harry stumbled back, his glasses broken, his face bruised. Had Lucius Malfoy not entered just minutes later, Harry might have stayed hidden, or worse, been found by someone less predictable. "I ended up in Nocturne Alley," he later told Ron, shaken. The powder had worked, but not for his benefit. Floo powder was trusted, yes, but never safe. It demanded clarity, control, and confidence. It wasn't a game. The fire listened, but it listened literally. One misplaced syllable could turn a shopping trip into a nightmare. That green flame was a doorway, and doors in the magical world don't always open where you expect. Number 12. Mad-Eye Moody's Eye. Mad-Eye Moody's eye never stopped moving. Even when he was still, the bright blue orb spun wildly in its socket, scanning everything around him. Walls, doors, concealment spells, it saw through them all. No one could hide from that eye. Not even someone under an invisibility cloak. It wasn't just enchanted, it was something darker, older, and far more watchful than anyone dared admit. After Moody's death, the eye didn't rest. Dolores Umbridge took it and mounted it on her office door at the Ministry of Magic, like a trophy. She used it to watch the corridors, spying on those who passed, a piece of a dead hero turned into a surveillance tool for tyranny. It wasn't just offensive, it was disturbing. The thing that once protected lives was now twisted into a symbol of fear. When Harry returned to the Ministry during his infiltration mission, he saw the eye. It stared at him from the wood, lifeless but still unsettling. "That's Mad-Eye's eye," he whispered, and something inside him turned cold. He didn't leave it there. He stole it back, not for strategy, not for advantage, but for respect. Moody had given everything for the cause. Harry couldn't let his legacy hang like a decoration on a monster's door. Later, Harry buried the eye beneath a tree. Quietly, alone, no spells, no ceremony, just earth and memory. That eye had seen more than any wizard ever should. It had watched war, betrayal, death, and still tried to protect. Even in death, it had meaning, and now, finally, it had rest. Number 13. The Golden Snitch. The golden snitch is small, almost delicate. It fits in the palm of a hand. With silver wings that flutter like a hummingbird's, it dances through the air in every Quidditch match. To most, it's just a ball, a target, a game piece. But the snitch hides a layer of ancient magic. It remembers touch. The snitch has flesh memory, Rufus Scrimgeour told Harry in Deathly Hallows. It knows who first held it. That enchantment turned a toy into a vault. Dumbledore understood the snitch's secret. He knew Harry had to open something that no one else could. That's why, in his will, he left Harry the very snitch he caught in his first ever Quidditch match. It wasn't random, it was planned. Dumbledore had enchanted it to respond only to Harry's touch, not by catching it, but by kissing it. When Harry whispered, "I open at the close," and brought it to his lips, the snitch opened. Inside was the resurrection stone. That moment in the Forbidden Forest wasn't about magic tricks, it was about faith. Harry had to walk toward death, alone, but Dumbledore left him the one thing that might help, a way to see his parents again, to feel their presence, if only for a moment. "You've been so brave," said Lily Potter, her spirit rising from the stone. The snitch had done more than fly. It had waited, held its silence, and kept a secret until the boy who lived was ready. It's easy to forget that the snitch was created for sport, but its creator, Bowman Wright, made it from gold for a reason. It was always meant to be more than a ball. In Harry's story, it became a symbol of destiny, of memory, of sacrifice, a silent witness that carried one of the Deathly Hallows inside its golden shell until the right hands and the right moment brought its truth to light. Number 14. The Goblet of Fire. The Goblet of Fire looked like a simple silver cup with blue flames, but it was far more than that. Ancient magic ran through it, powerful, binding, and absolute. Once a name was accepted into the goblet, the chosen wizard or witch had no choice but to compete. Not even the Ministry of Magic could override its decision. As Dumbledore said in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, the Goblet of Fire constitutes a binding magical contract. That contract nearly cost Harry his life. Harry never put his name in the goblet. He was 14, underage, and had no intention of entering the Triwizard Tournament. But someone else did it for him, someone who wanted him dead. When the goblet spat out his name, the entire school went silent. "Harry Potter," it said, and the room froze. Harry stood there, stunned. The flames had chosen him. The magic of the goblet had sealed his fate. The artifact couldn't be fooled easily. It was protected by powerful enchantments and ancient defenses, but Barty Crouch Jr., posing as Mad-Eye Moody, knew how to manipulate it. He turned the Triwizard Tournament into a trap. The final task led Harry straight to a graveyard where Lord Voldemort was waiting. It wasn't just a competition anymore. It was a setup for murder. The Goblet of Fire wasn't evil, but it was unforgiving. It didn't care about justice, truth, or the age of the contestant. It followed the rules of old magic, and once lit, it couldn't be undone. Dumbledore couldn't stop it, neither could McGonagall or the Ministry officials. Harry was alone in a game that was never meant for him. The goblet had spoken, and its word was law. Number 15, Tom Riddle's diary. It looked like a simple diary, a worn black notebook, the kind any Hogwarts student might carry in their satchel, with nothing more than a name elegantly inscribed in fading ink, T.M. Riddle. But this object, forgotten among the lost things in the girls' bathroom, was not just parchment and binding, it was a trap, a whispering relic of a soul broken into pieces, feeding on innocence and loneliness. What seemed mundane was, in truth, one of the most dangerous magical items Harry Potter would ever encounter. The diary of Tom Marvolo Riddle. Ginny Weasley found it by accident, tucked among the second-hand books her parents had bought for her. She was a first year then, overwhelmed by the grandeur of Hogwarts, burdened by the shadow of her older brothers, and holding a quiet fascination for the famous Harry Potter. The diary became her secret friend. She wrote in it as she would to a trusted confidant, never questioning why the ink vanished on contact, nor why new words appeared in reply. She didn't realize she was not alone. Tom Riddle was listening. Riddle, a memory frozen in ink, responded with the precision of a predator. He made her feel heard. He encouraged her. He asked questions about her thoughts, her fears, her dreams. And slowly, inch by inch, Ginny gave herself away. She poured her heart into those pages, not knowing that each word gave the diary more power, more access to her mind. As she shared her secrets, Riddle's influence grew stronger, weaving itself into her very soul like ivy on an old stone wall. Her voice became quieter, her laughter faded, her eyes, once bright with curiosity, began to look haunted. The diary didn't just speak, it took. It pulled at her spirit until Ginny's will began to blur, replaced by a colder, crueler presence. The memory of a teenage Tom Riddle began to seep into the present, using Ginny's hands to write warnings on walls in blood, to open the Chamber of Secrets, to unleash a terror no student was prepared to face. The Chamber of Secrets has been opened. Enemies of the air, beware. These were not the words of a child. They were the commands of a boy who had once become the monster that would later take the name Lord Voldemort. What made the diary truly horrific was its subtlety. It did not possess Ginny in one violent moment. It wrapped itself around her psyche, slowly taking root. She never saw it happening. She woke up with chicken feathers on her robes and red paint on her hands, unsure of where she'd been or what she'd done. Her memory was fragmented, as if stolen and stitched together by someone else. And even as she began to suspect something was wrong, she couldn't stop writing. The diary compelled her. It had become an addiction, a lifeline she didn't realize was draining her dry. It is in the bowels of Hogwarts, among bones and serpents, that the diary reached the height of its power. Tom Riddle, a mere shade, emerged through the ink as a ghost made flesh. He was handsome, clever, and terrifyingly calm. "Ginny poured out her soul to me," he told Harry, standing over her nearly lifeless body. "I grew stronger and stronger on a diet of her deepest fears, her darkest secrets." It was not simply a magical connection, it was theft. The diary had been feeding on her soul, fragment by fragment, until there was barely anything left. What the diary revealed was Voldemort's cunning, not just in splitting his soul, but in disguising it. A diary is a thing of trust, of vulnerability. Children write their dreams and sorrows in it, believing their thoughts are safe. Riddle turned that trust into a weapon. He turned a sacred object of emotional honesty into a crucible for fear and control. That's why it was effective. It didn't scare Ginny away, it welcomed her. Harry's confrontation with the diary in the Chamber of Secrets was more than a battle against a basilisk or the memory of a boy. It was a battle against Voldemort's strategy and the idea that horror can hide behind the familiar. "You're not," Harry said to the memory of Riddle, "the greatest sorcerer in the world." And yet, even in memory form, Riddle had nearly succeeded in killing a girl, resurrecting himself, and unleashing a monster. That danger lived in the pages of a book, no bigger than a notebook. And that alone was terrifying. It was Fawkes the Phoenix who delivered the weapon, a basilisk fang dripping with venom. Harry did not hesitate. He pierced the diary, and the scream that echoed was not Ginny's, but Riddle's. Black ink burst from the hole, like blood from a wound, staining Harry's arm, the floor, the page. The diary twitched like a living thing. And then silence. The spell was broken. The soul fragment trapped inside had been destroyed. That moment remains one of the most symbolic in Harry's journey. It showed for the first time that Voldemort was not invincible. His secrets could be undone. His soul, once divided, could be unmade. It was a discovery with consequences far beyond that year. The diary was a Horcrux. A word Harry wouldn't learn until years later, but whose meaning had already begun to shape his destiny. The destruction of the diary was the first unraveling of the Dark Lord's immortality. The diary story is also a chilling reminder of how evil presents itself. Not always as a curse or a curse-breaker, not as a howling beast or a hooded figure, but sometimes as an ordinary object, lying innocently in a cauldron full of second-hand school supplies. Voldemort counted on that. He wanted his Horcruxes hidden in plain sight, woven into the fabric of the wizarding world. The diary had a purpose beyond mere concealment, and it was a test run, a prototype of possession, a proof that he could create pain from a distance and watch it unfold like theatre. Number 16, the Quill of Acceptance. The Quill of Acceptance and the Book of Admittance sat high in a tower of Hogwarts behind a locked door that none but a few had ever passed through. They did not shine, they did not float, they did not glow with golden light. And yet, these two objects, one a simple feathered quill, the other a thick, leather-bound tome, had shaped the fate of the wizarding world for over 1,000 years. No student ever received their Hogwarts letter unless the quill had first scratched their name into the parchment-thick pages, and no teacher, no matter how powerful or knowledgeable, could alter the decision once it had been made. There was no override, no appeals. The child was either magical or they were not. That was the decree of the quill, and no force in the wizarding world had ever dared challenge it. Unlike many artifacts in magical Britain, the Quill of Acceptance operated without fanfare. It never asked permission, never made noise, never responded to any spell or charm directed at it. It simply hovered above the open book of admittance and waited. Its ink was endless, invisible until it touched the book's enchanted pages. When a magical child was born anywhere in the United Kingdom, the quill would twitch, dip, and write, one delicate stroke at a time, until the name was complete. It did not matter if the child was a Muggle-born or from an old pure-blood family. If the quill moved, it meant the child had magic in their blood, and their name would appear in the book, along with the date and time of their birth. Once the name was recorded, it could never be erased. Minerva McGonagall, upon becoming deputy headmistress, was granted access to the tower where the book and quill were kept. She described the moment with quiet awe in her private notes. There is something deeply humbling about standing in the same room where the future is quietly written. You cannot see the hand of the author, yet you feel its presence in every line. She later revealed that one of the most surprising names the book had ever recorded was that of Hermione Jean Granger, a child born to two Muggle dentists in Crawley. When Minerva saw the neat lines of her name inked in the tome 11 years before the girl ever arrived, she knew the quill was infallible. It saw what even the most advanced magical diagnostics could not. The mystery of the quill's origins remains one of the great unsolved riddles in magical history. Some believe it was created by Merlin himself, enchanted to detect the faintest spark of magical potential from the moment of birth. Others insist it is even older, the work of the founders of Hogwarts, or perhaps a gift from a forgotten race of magical beings. No wand has ever reproduced the enchantment embedded within its feathered core. No spell has successfully mimicked its judgment. The Department of Mysteries once attempted to craft a similar device using the feathers of a thunderbird and the ink of a basilisk, but the result was a quill that exploded upon contact with parchment. The original remains untouched, floating endlessly over its watchful book. The Book of Admittance is no less extraordinary. Unlike most magical texts, it is utterly resistant to tampering. It cannot be enchanted, duplicated, burned, soaked, sliced, or repaired. When Albus Dumbledore was headmaster, he reportedly tried to charm the book to produce a list of upcoming students for planning purposes. The book simply closed itself and refused to reopen for 3 days. Dumbledore, ever respectful of powerful magic, took this as a sign. Some things, he later told McGonagall, are not ours to control. The book answers only to the deeper magic of being. In 1980, the book recorded the name of a boy who would change the course of history. It was a cold July night when the quill stirred violently as though jolted from sleep. The name it wrote, in smooth but urgent strokes, was Harry James Potter. Unlike most entries, this one shimmered briefly on the page, the ink glowing faintly before settling into its resting state. The house elf who cleaned the chamber each week swore the room grew warmer for a moment, as if the air itself had recognized something powerful being written into the timeline. When McGonagall checked the book days later, she paused at that sight. "Harry Potter," she whispered. She underlined the name gently with her finger, not to change it, no one could, but to acknowledge it. From that day on, Hogwarts waited for the boy it had already accepted. It is said that the quill once refused to write a name that even the ministry insisted should be magical. In 1943, the birth of a pure-blood heir from the Rosier family was cause for celebration. The family sent owls to Hogwarts months before the child's 11th birthday, demanding to know why no letter had come. But when the deputy headmistress examined the book, the boy's name was absent. The family protested, claimed political interference, demanded an investigation. Yet the book remained silent. Years later, it was revealed that the boy had never performed a single act of magic. He died in obscurity, his family ruined. The quill, it turned out, had been right all along. Even squibs, those born to magical parents but with no magical power, are subject to the judgment of the quill. Argus Filch, caretaker of Hogwarts, once tried to sneak a glance at the book in a drunken rage, hoping to see his own name somewhere within. It was not there. Not even a smudge, he confessed bitterly to a portrait of Phineas Nigellus Black. The portrait remained silent, perhaps out of respect. The book did not lie. If it hadn't written your name, it meant you had no spark. Number 17, Marvolo Gaunt's ring. The ring had once gleamed proudly on the finger of a Gaunt, heir of Salazar Slytherin himself. Crafted in ancient times, it was passed from generation to generation, not merely as an ornament, but as a symbol of an unbroken lineage tied to blood purity, power, and obsession. Yet no one who possessed it ever understood its full weight. The Gaunt ring, dark and unassuming to a Muggle eye, was a vortex of magic, both sacred and profane. In time, it became a vessel of two incompatible forces, a Horcrux, forged by murder, and a Hallows relic, born of myth and death. To understand the tragedy of this object is to peer into the heart of what magic can become when twisted by longing and arrogance. When Albus Dumbledore encountered the ring in the ruins of the Gaunt shack, he did not see merely a cursed trinket left behind by a family broken by madness. He saw a key to the past, not Tom Riddle's past but his own. The resurrection stone, embedded within the gold, called to him with a voice stronger than logic or self-preservation. It whispered of his sister Ariana, whose death haunted him more deeply than any duel or defeat. In Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, it is written that Dumbledore's hand was blackened and withered, the mark of an irreversible curse. But long before the pain came, there had been temptation. He slipped the ring onto his finger, driven by that most human of desires, to make amends with the dead. The curse sprang to life immediately, the Horcrux defending itself with brutal efficiency. Voldemort, ever paranoid, had imbued the ring with a deadly charm that would ensure no one could possess it without consequence. It was not enough for his soul to be safe, it had to be protected with fatality. Dumbledore, despite all his power, had overstepped a boundary even he had once warned others never to cross. In that moment, the artifact revealed its nature, not simply magical, but predatory. It devoured hope with the same hunger as it preserved fragments of a dark soul. The ring had served Voldemort's purpose perfectly. It was irresistible to those who sought something they had lost. The Resurrection Stone was one of the 3 Deathly Hallows, believed by most to be a fairy tale, yet Dumbledore knew better. Carved with the symbol of the Hallows, a circle within a triangle bisected by a line, it was proof of the tale's reality. But Dumbledore also knew that this stone was cursed with irony. For the second brother in the tale of the 3 brothers used it to call back the woman he loved, only to find her pale and sorrowful. Unable to bear her ghostly presence, he took his own life. Dumbledore, unlike the brother, did not die by suicide, but his fate was sealed by the same yearning. He tried to undo loss, and loss answered with vengeance. It was Severus Snape who delayed the inevitable. Called to Dumbledore's aid, Snape managed to contain the curse within Dumbledore's hand, limiting its spread. But it was a delay, not a cure. As Dumbledore later told Harry, "I was a fool. I was such a fool, Harry. But I was not better than you. I, too, was tempted by the Hallows." His admission is a profound moment of vulnerability, stripping away the image of a flawless wizard and revealing a man riddled with guilt. The ring had offered him the illusion of reconciliation, and for that illusion he paid with his life. The ring, in essence, exposed the fallibility of even the greatest among wizards. The origin of the ring's darkness stretched far beyond Voldemort. Marvolo Gaunt, Voldemort's grandfather, treasured it not for its hidden power, but for its lineage. He brandished it before the ministry officials like a badge of superiority. Yet, as the family crumbled into poverty and mental instability, the ring became a relic of decay. Voldemort stole it from his uncle Morphin after murdering his father and grandparents, then altered it into a Horcrux using the same patricidal act. Thus the ring bore not just dark magic but blood, Riddle blood, spilt in cold cruelty to anchor a soul. Its transformation into a Horcrux demanded murder, the deepest violation of the magical order. Voldemort did not choose the ring randomly, he selected it for its personal meaning, its heritage, and its symbolic weight. It was a statement. The Gaunts were nothing, but their legacy would serve his immortality. The Resurrection Stone's presence within it was almost an afterthought to Voldemort, who had never been interested in life after death unless it was his own. He understood neither the story of the Hallows nor the peril of desecrating such a sacred object. To him it was a vessel, and vessels were meant to be filled with whatever power he demanded. The dual identity of the ring made it uniquely dangerous. Horcruxes, by design, corrupt and influence those near them, driving obsession and madness. The Resurrection Stone, too, breeds obsession, fixation on what is gone and cannot return whole. The ring, therefore, is a magnet for sorrow and self-destruction. It pulls at the mind's weakest point, memory. Harry Potter himself was given the Resurrection Stone much later, hidden inside the golden snitch. He resisted its promise, using it only to receive comfort from his lost loved ones before facing death. Harry understood something Dumbledore had forgotten in his grief, that death is not meant to be reversed. Number 18, Newt Scamander's magical suitcase. The battered suitcase that Newt Scamander carried through ports, train stations, and alleyways was no ordinary piece of luggage. Scuffed and leather-bound, it bore the quiet dignity of an object that had seen too many wonders to boast. Yet within its enchanted seams lay a magical expanse, a realm so vast and intricate that even seasoned wizards would marvel at its craftsmanship. Newt's suitcase was a masterwork of wizarding enchantment, a concealed sanctuary for dozens of magical beasts, tailored biomes, and specialized chambers, all held together by the complex spells of expansion and dimensional transfiguration. The charm that expanded the suitcase's interior was not the common undetectable extension charm taught to fifth years at Hogwarts. What Newt achieved was far beyond textbook magic. Inside the modest frame of the suitcase was an ecosystem, a living, breathing world with shifting temperatures, flowing water, and wind-blown foliage. A snowy tundra for his Graphorn, a humid jungle for his Bowtruckle, a lunar-lit cave for his Mooncalves. Each creature lived in a habitat crafted with care and deep understanding. It was more than utility, it was devotion. This was not simply a bag, it was a conservation effort, a mobile ark for endangered magical species. The Ministry of Magic had long discouraged wizards from performing such extensive modifications to their possessions, especially if said possessions had any chance of being seen by Muggles. But Newt Scamander was never one to follow bureaucratic caution. In 1926, when he stepped off a steamer into New York City, suitcase in hand, he was carrying an entire hidden zoo. It was this moment that would ignite one of the most chaotic chain reactions in the history of Muggle-wizard interaction on American soil. Newt's suitcase was designed to adapt. On its outer latch, a small brass dial offered three settings: Muggle-worthy, wizard-only, and open. In its Muggle-worthy state, the suitcase concealed all signs of magic, presenting itself as a simple, if rather heavy, piece of luggage containing mundane items: coats, boots, toiletries. The security features were ingenious but not foolproof. In a moment of distraction, as Newt attempted to wrangle a mischievous Niffler inside a bank, the suitcase's security failed and its contents began to spill, quite literally, into the real world. Or it was the Niffler who first escaped. Drawn to glittering objects, it leapt from the suitcase and darted across the marble floor of the bank, scattering coins and chewing through jewelry cases. But it wasn't just the Niffler. In the chaos, a Murtlap scurried off into the alleys, and a Dougal, the Demi-Guise known for his ability to become invisible, vanished into the city, leaving behind only a trail of minor panic and rising confusion. The suitcase had become a liability, its marvel now a potential threat to the International Statute of Secrecy. These events were not mere misadventures. They revealed the deep, unpredictable tension between magical innovation and the need for concealment. Newt had built something extraordinary, but even he could not control every variable. When MACUSA, the Magical Congress of the United States of America, seized the suitcase, President Serafina Picquery viewed it with suspicion. "No one but a fool or a criminal would travel with such a thing," she declared, her voice cold and clipped. But what she saw as recklessness was, in truth, a desperate act of protection. Newt was trying to rescue creatures from extinction. The suitcase was his sanctuary, his protest against the magical world's fear and ignorance of its own fauna. Inside the suitcase, Newt had also crafted a workshop, a place filled with vials of restorative elixirs, ropes, scales, feeding tools, and parchment-covered journals. Here he recorded observations, sketched anatomical drawings, and bred creatures in controlled settings. There was a warmth to the space, lit with floating lanterns and echoing with the distant rustle of wings and growls of hibernating beasts. It was not just a tool, it was his home, his heart made tangible through spellcraft. The expansion charm allowed space, but not time. Newt had to maintain every ecosystem manually, regulating moisture, feeding schedules, cleaning habitats, and ensuring magical containment. He used a combination of herbivorous charms for plant growth, cooling charms for Arctic zones, and protego wards to prevent creatures from clashing. The effort was monumental. When Queenie Goldstein first glimpsed the interior, she gasped, overwhelmed. "It's like a whole world in there," she whispered. And she was right. It was perhaps in Paris 2 years later when the suitcase once again teetered on the edge of catastrophe. Searching for his escaped Zulu, a cat-like beast of immense power and grace, Newt was forced to open the suitcase in the middle of a bustling French street. The Zulu, in distress and pain, roared and began climbing buildings, tangling through flags and street lamps, its striped tail flashing like a ribbon of fire. Only Newt's careful re-entry to the suitcase, luring the creature back with soothing spells and a rubber chicken, could contain the outbreak. To the onlookers, it was a blur of movement and strange noise, but to Newt, it was a near tragedy averted. What made the suitcase even more magical was its sentient sensitivity. It responded to Newt's touch, opening swiftly for emergencies and snapping shut when threatened. It recognized him, understood his rhythm, and perhaps even shared in his mission. This subtle intelligence may have been accidental, an echo of the ambient magic inside, but it made the suitcase feel alive, like a loyal hound or a trusted companion. One must not forget the ethical implications. By hiding creatures in a suitcase, Newt raised questions that even Albus Dumbledore pondered aloud. Was this truly protection, or was it captivity? Newt's answer was found in the behavior of the beasts themselves. They returned to the suitcase willingly. The Nundu, the Akami, the Thunderbird, each had ample opportunity to escape forever, yet stayed close, responding to Newt's presence with trust. They were not caged, they were preserved. Wizards and witches, Newt once wrote in his notes, have much to learn from those they seek to control. In the vast world of magical artifacts, few compare in complexity and intimacy to Newt's suitcase. The Elder Wand may command raw power, and the Resurrection Stone may beckon ghosts, but the suitcase houses life. It shelters what the world fears, and in doing so becomes an act of rebellion. Newt's case was not a weapon, nor a treasure chest, but a philosophy in leather, a belief that magic's purpose was not dominance, but stewardship. The damage it could cause when misused was not to be ignored. During the brief time it was in the hands of Jacob Kowalski, an unsuspecting muggle, the suitcase nearly erupted in Grand Central Station. Jacob, well-meaning but clueless, accidentally opened it on the open setting. The result? A baby erumpent charged through baggage carts, flaming salamanders took to the rafters, and a Efwooper's hypnotic song nearly caused a stampede. It took 3 obliviators and a memory potion rainstorm to undo the damage. And yet, that chaos held a mirror to the magical world's fear. The beasts were not dangerous by nature. They were reacting to fear, to being misunderstood, to being shoved into a corner by laws and wands. The suitcase was the last place they felt safe. It was a hidden Eden, crafted by a wizard who chose empathy over prestige. In one of his private field journals, Newt wrote, "If you want to understand magic, look not to spells or bloodlines, but to how we treat what we fear." The suitcase was more than enchanted luggage. It was a challenge to the wizarding world, a call to see the value in what they discard. Every scratch on its surface, every dent on its frame, bore witness to the silent war Newt fought every day, a war for wonder, for preservation, and for the beasts who had no voice. Even after the chaos in New York, after the escape in Paris, and after Macusa branded him with suspicion, Newt refused to abandon his suitcase. He could have stored the beasts in magical enclosures in a countryside estate, safe and unseen. But he chose the suitcase, portable and vulnerable, because it meant he could go where he was needed, help where others couldn't. It meant the fight could move with him. So when the leather snapped shut after another successful rescue, and Newt brushed the dust from its handle, it wasn't just a wizard closing a bag. It was a caretaker tending to a world inside a box. And in that box was hope, roaring and flickering and flying, waiting for a world wise enough to see it. Number 19, the Probity Probe. In a dimly lit chamber deep within the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, nestled between ancient filing cabinets and spell-worn interrogation chairs, lies a small silver object no larger than a snitch. It is not labelled, nor is it encased in any protective glass, and yet its value to the Ministry of Magic is immeasurable. Known to a select few as the Delphinor, this enchanted artifact is quietly revered as one of the most trusted tools in the pursuit of magical justice. Most wizards have never heard its name. Some confuse it with a sea creature, but those who have faced its silent spinning understand its terrifying precision. Unlike Veritaserum, which requires consent or force, the Delphinor demands only silence. It listens, it senses, and it spins, faster and faster, if the speaker lies. The Delphinor resembles a child's toy, like a miniature silver top, smooth and polished, with delicate engravings around its base. But once activated during a testimony or interrogation, it reacts to the vibrations of untruth with uncanny sensitivity. Ancient magic courses through its metallic core, detecting not merely lies but dissonance, the subtle misalignment between thought and spoken word. Unlike legilimency, it does not pry into the mind. Instead, it listens to the soul. That, at least, is how one aura once described it after watching a witness crumble under its spinning gaze. Though rarely mentioned in official documents, the Delphinor made a quiet but significant appearance during the Wizengamot hearings in the summer of 1995, when Harry Potter stood trial for performing the Patronus charm in the presence of a muggle. Dolores Umbridge, poised and venomous, oversaw the proceeding. The courtroom was tense with the weight of prejudice, and Harry could feel every eye in the chamber pressing against him. What many did not see, what was tucked behind the clerk's podium, was the small silver instrument spinning slowly at the start of his testimony. As Harry insisted that he acted to repel Dementors and protect his cousin Dudley, the Delphinor remained slow, balanced, and eerily silent. It didn't twitch, didn't hum. For those watching closely, its stillness was an unspoken validation. Harry spoke the truth. It is easy to forget that justice in the magical world does not rely solely on truth. It relies on power too. The Delphinor, though effective, could not prevent the Ministry from disbelieving Harry. It could not force Cornelius Fudge to accept what he refused to believe. And yet its presence that day was a quiet rebellion against corruption. While Umbridge sneered and Fudge scoffed, the Delphinor spun in quiet circles of truth, bearing witness to Harry's honesty. Though effective, the Delphinor is not flawless. Wizards skilled in occlumency, like Severus Snape or Bellatrix Lestrange, can mask the internal chaos that usually betrays a liar. The artifact responds to belief, not intention. If one believes their lie or has twisted memories so tightly around it that it becomes truth, the Delphinor remains calm. It spins as if nothing is amiss. This makes it a dangerous gamble. In the wrong hands, with the right mind, it can be deceived. Consider the case of Thaddeus Thorn, a high-ranking member of the Department of Magical Games and Sports. In 1978, Thorn was accused of leaking confidential details of the Triwizard Tournament to foreign competitors. During questioning, the Delphinor remained steady. Thorn, a respected public servant and accomplished occlumens, insisted on his innocence. The investigation stalled. Only later, through pensieve testimony and surviving correspondence, was it revealed that Thorn had indeed been involved, but had convinced himself that he acted for the greater good. "The ministry is blind to its own corruption," he once wrote. "If justice requires secrecy, so be it." His self-justification had rendered the Delphinor useless. That case became a cautionary tale. The artifact, once thought to be a final word on truth, was suddenly a symbol of how malleable truth can be. As a result, the Department of Magical Law Enforcement now treats the Delphinor as one of many tools in the investigative arsenal, valuable but not conclusive. It is used in conjunction with other spells like Homenum Revelio or even memories extracted via pensieve. Still, it remains an object of reverence, not because it is perfect, but because it dares to try. The craftsmanship of the Delphinor is shrouded in mystery. Some say it was forged by goblin metallurgists in the 12th century, using silver mined from a magical vein deep beneath the Austrian Alps. Others whisper that it was enchanted by one of the original unspeakables, whose names have been lost to time. What is known is that only 3 functioning Delphinors exist in the entire wizarding world. One resides in the Ministry of Magic in London. Another is believed to be in the custody of the Magical Congress of the United States of America. The third vanished during the First Wizarding War and has not been seen since. Its rarity has made the Delphinor a target of magical artifact collectors. In 1991, a dark wizard named Vortimer Greaves attempted to steal the Ministry's Delphinor during a staged fire drill. Disguised as a janitor, he infiltrated the Department of Magical Law Enforcement and nearly escaped before being stunned by Aura Kingsley Shacklebolt. Greaves later confessed that he intended to sell it to a wealthy Scandinavian warlock who believed he could reverse engineer its magic to create a truth serum without side effects. The Ministry reinforced its protective spells around the artifact following the incident, and its location within the building was permanently changed. Although it does not feature in children's textbooks or popular wizarding histories, the Delphinor has left its fingerprints on many critical decisions. During the internal inquiry into the actions of Bartimius Crouch Jr., shortly after the fall of Voldemort in 1998, the artifact was used to verify statements from multiple ministry officials. The investigation revealed just how far the rot had spread in the final days of the Second Wizarding War. One witness, a former magical transport supervisor, wept as the Delphinor spun wildly beside her. She hadn't intended to lie, but she'd spent so long suppressing the truth that her words came out warped. "I didn't want to remember," she later told a reporter. "But the Delphinor remembered for me." Artifacts like the Delphinor reflect a truth about magic that is often forgotten. The strongest spells are not always the most visible. While battle wands and enchanted swords take the spotlight, silent instruments like this one shape the very foundation of magical society. Without trust in testimony, without belief in evidence, the magical world would collapse into suspicion and fear. The Delphinor, in its spinning silence, offers a fragile thread of certainty. It is not absolute, but it is real. There is something haunting about the way it moves, never jerky, never abrupt. When someone speaks a falsehood, the artifact doesn't accuse. It simply spins a little faster, as if vibrating with the dissonance of untruth. It never points fingers. It never blinks, but its movement can chill a room, especially when its message contradicts the words being said aloud. In some cases, that contradiction has torn apart reputations. In others, it has saved lives. Hermione Granger once referenced the Delphinor in a speech to the Wizengamot while campaigning for reform in magical justice. "We must remember," she said, "that even our most trusted instruments can fail when confronted with a corrupted mind. But the failure is not in the magic, it is in the complexity of the human spirit." She proposed expanding the training of auras in mind-based magic, including occlumency detection, and argued for the careful and responsible use of artifacts like the Delphinor. Her reforms passed narrowly, but they forever changed how magical interrogations are conducted. The Delphinor is not a weapon. It does not wound or curse. It cannot be wielded with force, and yet its mere presence in a room is enough to silence even the boldest liars. That is the true power of magical law, not in fear but in quiet accountability. The kind that does not shout. The kind that spins gently, waiting for truth to find its voice. For all its limitations, the Delphinor remains a reminder that truth in the magical world is never simple. It is layered, distorted, buried, and reborn. It flickers between memory and belief, between honesty and justification. And somewhere in that quiet grey space, a small silver artifact spins its way through the noise, listening not just to what is said, but to what lies beneath. Number 20, the Wizarding Wireless Network Radio. It looked like nothing more than an old wireless set, its dials rusted and wooden casing scuffed by time. Sitting on a dusty shelf, abandoned in the attic of a safe house or the back corner of the burrow, no one would suspect it had ever played a vital role in the wizarding world's darkest days. But appearances are deceiving in magic. What seemed like a relic of pre-war wizarding technology was, in truth, one of the most powerful tools of resistance during Voldemort's reign. The enchanted magical radio, transformed into a secret broadcast hub known only to the faithful as Potterwatch. While the war was waged in forests and castles with duels of light and shadow, this simple radio crackled with hope, sending courage through the airwaves. The radio's significance stretched far beyond its parts. It had no connection to Muggle frequencies, no vulnerability to static from electricity or ordinary interference. It was tuned only to one signal, one imbued with layers of protective charms and secrecy spells. It did not hum to life unless the listener whispered the right password. Fred and George Weasley, with their flair for subversive mischief, were said to have helped embed the magical locks on it. The password would change frequently, and to know it was to be trusted by the Order. Without it, the device remained dead. But once activated, it became a lifeline for the scattered, the hunted, and the hopeless. It transmitted not only information, but something far rarer in those bleak months: truth. Lee Jordan, known previously for his exuberant Quidditch commentary, stepped into a far more dangerous role as the voice of Potterwatch. Hunted, displaced, and at times forced to hide under aliases like River, he used the magical radio to speak directly to wizardkind. His broadcasts bypassed the Ministry's propaganda, ignored the lies in the Daily Prophet, and struck straight at the heart of the fear that had spread like poison. He did not shout or dramatize. He spoke plainly, urgently, to anyone who would listen. "The wizarding community is under siege," he once said. "We must not give in to the lies of he who must not be named. Harry Potter is alive and the fight is not over." Listeners took his words to heart. They were tired of silence, tired of hiding, and in the quiet hours of the night, families huddled around their modified radios to hear forbidden news. It didn't matter if the signal was faint or the static too loud. What mattered was that someone, somewhere, was resisting. They whispered the password to one another like a prayer. The signal connected people across the country, from small homes in Ottery St. Catchpole to isolated outposts in the Scottish Highlands. Potterwatch became more than a station, it was a beacon. Fred and George, Remus Lupin and Kingsley Shacklebolt all lent their voices to the transmissions, each using pseudonyms for safety. Fred became Rodent, George Rapier, and Kingsley Royal. Remus took on the name Romulus, a subtle nod to the brother he had lost. Each brought their own tone and style, offering reports on resistance movements, calling out ministry lies, and delivering coded instructions. They spoke of victories when they could, and when they couldn't, they offered comfort. Sometimes just hearing a familiar voice was enough to keep the flame of rebellion burning. The radio, an otherwise overlooked object, was transformed into a magical artifact through enchantment and belief. It demonstrated a truth rarely acknowledged in magical warfare: not all battles are fought with wands. In Voldemort's world of fear, suppression, and deception, information became a weapon, and the radio was its conduit. With every broadcast, the Order pushed back against the fog of disinformation. A single message, like "Harry is safe," could inspire entire families to stay hidden just a little longer, to shelter someone in need, or to join the cause more openly. Rowling writes of the moment Harry, Ron, and Hermione stumble upon the broadcast during their wandering days, worn thin by cold and dread. They sit before the radio, silent, barely breathing, as Lee's voice cuts through the crackling noise. "We know that he who must not be named has ordered the murder of Muggleborns," Lee declares, "and we say to all listening, resist." In that moment, the trio feels a connection to a world that still fights. The magical radio becomes not only a tool, but a presence, a reminder that they are not alone. Such broadcasts were perilous. Detection meant death or worse. Even possessing a modified wireless could warrant imprisonment. But many risked it. A hidden receiver was as precious as an invisibility cloak, hidden behind wardrobes, under floorboards, or disguised as grandfather clocks. The Wizarding Underground learned to guard it with their lives. Even Hogwarts students under the rule of the Carrows passed whispered updates that originated from Potterwatch. It was an invisible network linking rebels by voice and purpose, stretching further than any apparition could carry them. Not every battle was public. Many were internal. As fear gripped communities and betrayal became common, the radio offered an anchor. It reminded listeners who they were. It named the dead, Ted Tonks, Dirk Cresswell, the Diggories, and honoured them in ways the new regime would not allow. It offered mourning when mourning became illegal, and, just as importantly, it offered laughter. Fred and George's banter remained, even in dark times, easing the burden of grief with a smile. They understood that hope was not born from solemnity alone. It needed joy to breathe. Potterwatch didn't end the war. It didn't duel Death Eaters or destroy Horcruxes. But it made those actions possible by holding together the moral fabric of a broken world. People followed what they heard. They moved supplies, they passed messages, they created pockets of safety. In a time when the Ministry had become a weapon of the enemy, Potterwatch became the true voice of wizardkind. It reminded listeners of a simple truth: the Order still lived. The radio's magic was not in its charms alone, but in its impact. Like the sword of Gryffindor, it became what was needed, an extension of the collective will to fight. It was a relic, but not of the past. It represented the endurance of belief. And in magical society, belief carries power. Wands cast spells, yes, but it is belief that drives them. That radio, dusty and old, filled rooms with strength, wrapped in Lee Jordan's voice and lit by the courage of the fallen. Years later, when the war was finally won, some tried to find those old devices. Most had been dismantled, destroyed by the Death Eaters or lost in transit, but a few remained, silent artifacts of war. Museums declined to display them, not seeing their value beside wands, robes, or battle-scarred portraits. But to those who had listened, who had wept over broadcasts or clung to hope because of a voice on the wind, the radio was sacred. Its story is not just about communication. It is about resistance, identity, and the quiet ways magic moves through the world. The Ministry had control over laws, patrols, and punishments, but the Order had the truth, and they delivered it not with force, but with signal and trust. The radio taught an important lesson, that the most powerful spells are not always shouted or fired. They are spoken, whispered, remembered. Words, when true, resonate louder than curses. In the end, Voldemort could not silence them. He ruled from the shadows, conjuring fear, but he could not control the air. He underestimated the power of voices. He thought silence could win. But in attics, kitchens, barns, and tents, the magical radio rebelled. With no wand in sight, it lit 1,000 fires across Britain, and when the final battle came, those who had listened were already marching. Number 21, the two-way mirror. The two-way mirror was never the most talked-about object in the Harry Potter saga. It lacked the grandeur of the Elder Wand, the haunting power of the Resurrection Stone, and the visual awe of the pensieve. And yet, this small rectangular mirror, gifted by Sirius Black to his godson, contained something far more intimate than any legendary artifact: the human need to connect. It was simple in appearance, framed in old silver, unassuming in design, but its power lay not in its looks but in its promise, a lifeline between two people, severed too soon. Harry Potter first received the mirror in his 5th year at Hogwarts. It was a time of suspicion and tension, a year overshadowed by the return of Voldemort, and the Ministry's desperate denial of it. Sirius, confined within the walls of Grimmauld Place, unable to help Harry in person, gave him the mirror as a last attempt to remain close. "Use it if you need me," Sirius had said, and placed it into Harry's hands with an urgency that the boy did not fully understand. The mirror was tucked away among his belongings, unexamined, untested, forgotten. Only later, after everything fell apart, did Harry come to understand what he had lost, not only Sirius, but the chance to see him again, one final time. After the tragedy in the Department of Mysteries, where Bellatrix Lestrange's curse sent Sirius through the veil, Harry returned to his dormitory in a state of desolation. Grief wrapped itself around him like the very shadows in which he had seen his godfather disappear. It was then, as he rummaged through his trunk in desperation, that his hand touched the cool surface of the mirror. He pulled it out, breathless, and stared into the glass. "Sirius?" he whispered. But the mirror remained blank, as mute and hollow as the void in his chest. This was the cruel irony. The mirror, enchanted to allow instant face-to-face communication over any distance, had the potential to prevent so much suffering. Had Harry remembered it? Had he only opened it during the chaos leading up to the battle at the Ministry, he could have called out to Sirius, confirmed his safety, avoided the trap. "I should have used it," he thought again and again, the regret feeding his mourning. Rowling described it with delicate restraint: a brilliantly blue sky overhead, birds singing, and the knowledge that he could have spoken to Sirius at any time, that the mirror had been with him all along. What made the mirror so compelling was its emotional resonance. Unlike the Floo network or Owlpost, it did not require time or intermediaries. It was direct, personal, a window into another person's presence. In a world where magic could manipulate time, transform bodies, and kill with a whisper, this small mirror did something infinitely more tender. It showed you a face, a pair of eyes, the silent comfort of someone who cared. It's easy to underestimate such magic. Spectacle often overshadows the subtle, but the two-way mirror was a marvel of intimacy. We don't know who created it or how old its enchantments are. Perhaps it was a creation of the Black family, or something Sirius had inherited from another era. What we do know is that its function was ancient and pure, a longing to remain in contact despite distance. It was, in essence, a magical answer to loneliness. And for Sirius, isolated by war, wanted by the Ministry, and cut off from most of the world, it was the only way to keep his bond with Harry alive. Even after Sirius's death, the mirror refused to fade into irrelevance. It reappeared in Harry's 6th year, tucked away in his trunk, and later again in the Deathly Hallows, when Harry carried its broken shard during the darkest stretch of his journey. In the final book, the fragment glimmered faintly with a blue eye, not Sirius's, but Aberforth Dumbledore's, who had acquired the other half. This twist added another layer to the mirror's mystery. How did Aberforth come by it? Was he trying to watch over Harry, or had he, too, known of its origin and value? We are never told, but the mirror's reappearance at crucial moments hints that its enchantment was not merely a trick, it was fate's thread, quietly weaving human lives together. It's heartbreaking to imagine the countless hours Sirius waited, perhaps checking his own mirror, hoping Harry would call. Perhaps he held it in his hands in Grimmauld Place, surrounded by darkness and dust, whispering Harry's name. It is this unspoken tragedy that makes the mirror such a powerful symbol, not of magic, but of missed chances, and Harry, ever brave but all too human, bore that regret like a scar. J.K. Rowling never elaborated on the mirror's origin, and perhaps that's intentional. Like love, some magics defy logic. There's a beauty in the unexplained, especially in objects tied to memory. In many ways, the two-way mirror functioned less as a communication device and more as a magical reliquary, preserving connection even when the person was gone. After Sirius's death, Harry kept the mirror not to use it, but to remember. It became a silent witness to his growth, a piece of his godfather he could still hold. What deepens the impact of the mirror is that its magic outlasted its purpose. Even broken, it held power. The shard that Harry kept through his journey in the Deathly Hallows saved his life. When imprisoned in Malfoy Manor, surrounded by Death Eaters, it was this fragment he called upon. "Help us," he whispered, and the blue eye appeared. In a moment when all hope was gone, the mirror became his salvation. It was Aberforth who answered the call, but the chain of cause began years earlier, with Sirius and the gift given out of love. Thus, the mirror serves a dual narrative function. First, as a symbol of loss and what might have been, second, as a quiet force of protection and continuity. It reminds us that relationships in the wizarding world are more powerful than any spell. The magic that saves is the magic of connection, and this is what the mirror embodies. Not just the ability to speak across distance, but the enduring need to reach someone, to be seen, to be heard. Among the many items Harry inherited, all from his father's cloak to Dumbledore's bequests, the two-way mirror remains the most emotionally charged. It's not heroic like a sword, nor strategic like a Horcrux detector. It's human, and that's what makes it so magical. The real tragedy is not that Harry didn't use it. The tragedy is that he needed it and never realized it until it was too late. Years later, readers still remember the mirror not for what it did, but for what it didn't. It is a rare artifact in fantasy fiction, one that derives its power from silence, from absence. It invites the reader to imagine, to mourn, and to cherish those fleeting opportunities we often overlook. Its magic was always rooted in choice, a choice Harry didn't make and one that changed the course of his story. In that sense, the two-way mirror becomes a kind of warning, a magical what if. It doesn't kill or enchant, but it lingers in the reader's mind. What would have happened if Harry had used it? Would Sirius have lived? Would Harry have avoided the ministry trap? These questions haunt the narrative, not with bitterness, but with a soft ache. The mirror becomes a storytelling device not just for Harry, but for us, a reflection of the moments we let slip away. There's something deeply poignant about an object that works only when both pieces are whole. The mirror, like love, is only powerful when reciprocated. That's why it shattered after Sirius's death, not physically but emotionally. Harry had his half, but the face he wanted to see was gone. Magic could not bring that back. and so the mirror's silence spoke louder than words. The lesson hidden within the glass is one that transcends fiction. We all carry mirrors, not literal ones, but emotional links to people we love. Sometimes we forget to use them. We assume there will be time. We delay the call, the letter, the visit, and then sometimes it's too late. The two-way mirror is not just a magical object. It is a memory, a missed opportunity, and a reminder to speak while we still can. Number 22, the music box. The music began as nothing more than a whisper, a soft lullaby echoing through the dim corners of the Lovegood household. At first it was barely noticeable, like wind brushing over glass, a mere suggestion of melody. But within moments it had filled the room, weaving into the air with a strange insistence. Harry Potter, Ron Weasley and Hermione Granger stood frozen, the hair on the backs of their necks rising. There was no obvious source, no instrument in sight. And yet their eyelids had begun to droop, heavy with a sleep that was not born of exhaustion, but enchantment. The source, as it turned out, was a simple, unassuming object, a small, enchanted music box, used not for entertainment, but for control. This object, known among some circles as the slumbering box, had the look of a child's toy. Its lacquered surface gleamed with swirling patterns of silver and jade, and a delicate crank protruded from one side. When wound, it produced a tinkling tune that carried a magical payload, a sound engineered to lull even the strongest wizard into a deep, unnatural sleep. But unlike ordinary magic, the box's melody bypassed resistance. It did not ask permission or seek to overpower with brute force. Instead, it seduced the senses, cradling the listener into docility. It was this exact box that the trio encountered during their visit to Xenophilius Lovegood's home in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. Xenophilius had set the trap under duress. His daughter, Luna, had been taken by the Death Eaters, and in a desperate attempt to trade the lives of Harry and his friends for her safety, he unleashed the box's magic upon them. The narrative describes it in haunting detail. A tinkling tune was drifting into the air. The effect was instantaneous. Ron's eyes slid out of focus and he slumped sideways into Hermione. The music was like nothing Harry had ever heard. It was composed of the purest, most harmonious notes, an irresistible, opiate lullaby, drifting like perfume through the room, tugging him toward unconsciousness. This moment was more than a plot device. It was a demonstration of how the magical world used seemingly innocent things for lethal purpose. The box revealed a sinister aspect of the wizarding world, where enchantment could be a weapon and where not every threat came with a flash of light or a shouted spell. This was an object designed not to kill, but to silence. In war, silence can be more dangerous than noise. The Death Eaters, ever cunning in their use of dark artifacts, had repurposed the music box as a tactical instrument. Rumours among the Order of the Phoenix spoke of its use in battlefields, hidden in abandoned homes or forest camps, luring unsuspecting aurors into magical slumber before ambushes. It was not the kind of tool one might find in textbooks, yet it existed, deadly and real. The power of the box lay in its subtlety. Most magical artifacts had a presence. You felt the hum of a Horcrux or the pulsing energy of a wand infused with malevolent magic. The music box offered no such warning. Its lullaby played on the deepest instincts, tapping into the human need for comfort and safety. It did not burn, choke, or strike. It coiled softly around the mind and body until consciousness surrendered. This made it especially dangerous to young witches and wizards who often lacked the mental discipline to resist such charms. Dumbledore himself had once warned about the dangers of underestimating beauty and charm in the magical world. In a private note to the Order, discovered after his death, he wrote, "That which soothes the senses may mask the sharpest dagger. Beware the spells that sing." It is almost certain he referred in part to artifacts like this. The wizarding world has a long and troubling history of creating magical tools that exploit the vulnerabilities of the human psyche. Enchantment, in many cases, becomes a way to rob someone of their agency without even drawing a wand. The encounter at the Lovegoods' home was brief but harrowing. Ron had nearly collapsed entirely before Hermione, mustering her last ounce of resistance, blasted the box apart with a non-verbal spell. The shrapnel of its wooden shell scattered like leaves in the wind, and with it the spell broke. But the moment lingered. Harry felt it in the hollowness behind his eyes and the fog that clung to his thoughts long after the music stopped. The box had almost claimed them, and it had done so without raising its voice. It's easy to imagine that before the war, such a box might have sat on a young witch's dresser, a gift from a doting grandparent. Perhaps it once held no magic at all, but in Voldemort's reign, innocence was co-opted for cruelty. The Death Eaters, ever skilled in dark transfigurations, had turned many household items into traps. Mirrors that cursed the viewer with madness, doorknobs that stole memories, inkpots that revealed secrets in invisible script. The music box was simply one of the most effective. Luna Lovegood, later reflecting on the event, admitted in a letter to Ginny that the box haunted her more than any of the Cruciatus curses her captors had tried on her. "There is something deeply wrong," she wrote, "about a song that wants to put you to sleep forever. It sings of comfort, but it only wants silence." That phrase, "it only wants silence," perfectly captures the horror of the box. It was not a tool for peace, it was a tool for compliance. The box's magic is particularly interesting when studied alongside the principles of enchanting in advanced magical theory. According to Bathilda Bagshot's unpublished notes, ancient Greek wizards were the first to experiment with sound-based charms that could influence the will. These early spells were rudimentary, but over centuries the idea evolved. Magical music became a field of its own. While the Celestina Warbeck fan club focuses on entertainment charms, the darker side of this tradition lingered in underground circles. The slumbering box, then, is not a modern invention. It is the child of ancient forbidden melodies. Hermione later remarked, during their tent-bound exile, that the music box had taught her something vital about magic. The danger isn't always in what something does. Sometimes it's in what it doesn't look like it's doing. She had seen enough battle by then to understand that not every enemy came with a dark mark. The music box wore no insignia. It offered no growl, no scream. It whispered, and in doing so it nearly destroyed them. In many ways, the music box parallels the greater themes of the Deathly Hallows, the illusion of control, the danger of underestimating the quiet, and the tragic consequences of desperation. Xenophilius was not a villain, he was a father, but his willingness to use such a device to endanger the very people his daughter admired was born of fear and helplessness. The box did not require hate. It only needed a motive. There is something inherently poetic and deeply unsettling about a melody designed for harm. Throughout human and magical history, music has been a symbol of culture, healing, and connection. To pervert it into a weapon is to rewrite the language of peace into a language of power. That the Death Eaters chose this path speaks volumes about their philosophy. They did not seek to merely win, they sought to reshape reality, using the familiar to mask the fatal. Among collectors of dark artifacts today, replicas of the slumbering box circulate in underground auctions. Most are non-functional, stripped of enchantment, but a few are said to still carry the original charm. The Ministry of Magic has placed a strict ban on their possession, yet curiosity draws some. To hold the box is to be reminded of the fine line between wonder and weapon. And to hear its tune, if one dares, is to walk the edge of consciousness, lured by something that feels like a lullaby, but smells like betrayal. Number 23. The Weasley Family Clock. The Weasley family clock stood tall in the living room of the Burrow, a place where magic and warmth intertwined in ways no grand mansion could replicate. Its hands, each etched with the names of family members, did not mark hours or minutes, but rather the whereabouts and fates of those it held dear. Home, travelling, at work, lost, hospital, prison, mortal peril, even dead. These were the destinations the hands could point to, and though it never chimed, never ticked, it spoke volumes in silence. In a world where dark forces loomed and uncertainty cloaked every sunrise, this enchanted object became far more than a mere curiosity. It became the heart of a family defined by loyalty, bound by love, and tested by war. It is not a Horcrux, imbued with the fractured soul of a Dark Lord, nor is it the Elder Wand, sought by generations of wizards for its unmatched power. Yet in its quiet magic, the Weasley clock holds something just as sacred, truthful protective magic rooted in family and bloodline. This object, barely described in passing by most, emerges under closer inspection as one of the most powerful artifacts of the Second Wizarding War. When Arthur Weasley repaired Muggle plugs or Molly Weasley knit sweaters in front of it, the clock wasn't just a decoration. It was a guardian. It watched when they couldn't. It knew what they feared. It spoke only in turning hands, but its message was always heard. When the war intensified and darkness began to swallow England in patches, first in whispers, then in screams, Molly Weasley's gaze often darted to the clock. During the events of Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, it is mentioned that all 9 hands on the clock pointed to mortal peril. Not just Ron, not just Fred and George, but even Percy, with whom Molly was not speaking at the time. Even Harry, who was not born a Weasley by name, but was one by heart, had his own hand. It was now pointing to mortal peril. That meant something. It was an honest instrument, unbiased in its assessment, unclouded by illusions. Where deception reigned, the Weasley clock told only truth. Imagine Molly on a stormy evening, Arthur late from work at the Ministry, and the war at its peak. Her eyes fix on the clock. Arthur's hand shifts suddenly to mortal peril. She grips the edge of the kitchen table. She doesn't know why, she doesn't know how, but the clock knows. Hours later, she hears about the attack on the Department of Magical Transportation. He was caught in it, survived it. But she had already known he was in danger. That is the clock's gift, and its curse. It informs but cannot explain. It warns but cannot intervene. It simply reflects the deepest truths of blood-bonded magic, like a magical pulse synchronized with the hearts of those it tracks. The magic that powers the clock is never explained in detail, and perhaps that is intentional. It is ancient magic, magic tied not to spells or wands, but to emotion, kinship, memory. The kind of magic Dumbledore spoke of when he told Harry that love is the most powerful force in the world. If a Patronus is shaped by joy and hope, then the Weasley clock is guided by worry and devotion. It is a manifestation of a mother's instinct, a father's vigilance. It was likely created long ago, passed through generations, perhaps even added to with each child's birth. Bill, Charlie, Percy, Fred, George, Ron, Ginny. Each new hand added with pride, each new risk breaking a piece of Molly's heart. In the final year before the fall of Voldemort, the Burrow became a target. The wedding of Bill and Fleur was attacked. Ministry officials were compromised. The Order of the Phoenix operated from the shadows. Ron went on the run with Harry and Hermione. And still, Molly watched the clock. Her sons were scattered. Her daughter, a rebel at Hogwarts. Her home was watched. But that clock, unmoving in form, yet ever moving in meaning, gave her what no spell or enchantment could, a tether. Even when she couldn't speak to them, couldn't see them, she could look up and know Ron was alive, Fred was safe, Ginny was not yet gone. After Fred's death at the Battle of Hogwarts, there is no direct mention of the clock, but one can imagine. Did the hand fall? Did it vanish? Or did it simply settle on dead and refuse to move again? That unthinkable moment, one that shattered the Weasley family forever, would have echoed first, not in letters or words, but in the silent confirmation of a needle refusing to return to home. No magic could comfort that. The clock, once a symbol of reassurance, must have become a permanent scar, a frozen reminder of love lost. Harry himself had no magical object quite like this. The Marauder's map allowed him to spy on people, the invisibility cloak allowed him to vanish, but he had nothing that told him if someone he loved was suffering or safe. That is why the clock matters. It's passive, not aggressive. It does not control fate, but it illuminates it. In a world where so many magical items are about power, control, immortality, the Weasley clock is about connection. It is not a weapon, it is a witness. That makes it almost unique among magical items. The Weasley clock also reveals something about the values of its owners. The burrow is cluttered, imperfect, but full of affection. No one in that house hoarded riches or prestige, but they had something deeper, concern for one another, and a willingness to confront fear with honesty. When the hand points to mortal peril, no one hides it. They brace for it. That kind of emotional transparency, anchored by a ticking truth, defined the Weasleys more than any wand or bloodline ever could. It's tempting to imagine what would happen if such a clock existed in every wizarding household. Would Lucius Malfoy's clock show prison when he was captured? Would Bellatrix Lestrange have a hand at all? Was there ever a family she truly cared for? Would Snape have one? Would Dumbledore's too full of secrets ever function properly? The Weasley clock works because it is powered by love that expects nothing in return. It is not transactional, it is not conditional. That is its deepest magic. Perhaps the most touching aspect of the clock is that it included Harry. He was not a blood relative, yet his hand existed on that dial because Molly had accepted him as her own. "You're not going to be alone," she once said to him. The magic of the clock recognized that truth. Blood may matter in spellwork and lineage, but magic fueled by emotion often disregards genetics. It honors intention. The hand pointing to Harry was not just a mark of love, it was an adoption written in enchantment. The object could have been locked away, displayed as a relic, preserved like a museum piece. But it never was. It stayed in the living room, ticking silently, alive with the family's emotional life. It was not kept for glory or history. It was kept because it served, because it mattered, because sometimes the deepest magic is the kind that watches, not acts, that bears witness, not power, that speaks through motion, not noise. In the end, the Weasley clock outlives many battles. It remains long after the Dark Lord is gone, long after the last funeral, long after the last scar has faded into a story. The clock remains because love remains. And as long as it moves, as long as it points to something, someone, somewhere, there is hope. Number 24. Hagrid's umbrella. It is easy to laugh at the sight of Rubeus Hagrid, a half-giant of towering size, clutching a frilly pink umbrella. The image borders on the absurd, a creature of brute strength, wielding an object more suitable for a tea party than a duel. But behind this oddity lies one of the most heartbreaking and quietly powerful relics of the magical world. Hagrid's pink umbrella is no mere weather shield. It conceals within it the broken pieces of his wand, the last remnants of a magical education cut brutally short by injustice. In that absurd umbrella, hidden from the eyes of the ministry and the rigid laws of magical society, lives the essence of resistance, loyalty, and the unyielding hope of someone who never stopped believing in magic, even when it stopped believing in him. Hagrid was expelled from Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry during his third year, accused of opening the Chamber of Secrets and causing the death of a student. Though innocent, the blame fell on his massive shoulders, and his wand was snapped in half by order of the ministry. It was a public disgrace, and the expulsion should have marked the end of his magical abilities. But Hagrid, ever resourceful and quietly defiant, did something no one expected. He saved the shards of his wand and embedded them into the shaft of a pink umbrella. By the time readers first meet him in Harry Potter and the philosopher's stone, the makeshift wand is already part of his daily life. It's both a tool and a secret, used discreetly, even lovingly, by someone who should not legally possess it at all. Despite its whimsical appearance, the umbrella is remarkably functional. When Hagrid taps it against the door of the hut on the rock to blast it open, Harry is stunned, not just by the arrival of the towering man, but by the undeniable magic flowing from a device that should have been powerless. "I demand that you leave at once, sir," says Vernon Dursley. And in response, Hagrid uses the umbrella to create a fire in the fireplace with a mere tap. The narrative does not describe a wand or a spell, but the implication is unmistakable. There is magic in the umbrella, and it is Hagrid's to wield. The umbrella becomes a symbol of all the things that Hagrid was denied. He was stripped of his right to study magic, but not of his innate connection to it. Through the umbrella he carves out a space for himself in a society that rejected him. The pink exterior may appear comical, but that too is part of its disguise. In a world of polished wands and noble bloodlines, Hagrid's magical tool is deliberately unfashionable, deliberately overlooked. It is not a sign of weakness. It is armor made of pink fabric and old wood, shielding the broken pieces of a dream. The magic channeled through the umbrella is not limited to simple charms. In one unforgettable moment, Hagrid uses it to punish Dudley Dursley. Upon seeing the boy greedily eating Harry's birthday cake, Hagrid murmurs a few words and swings the umbrella toward him. The result is instant and irreversible. Dudley sprouts a curly pink pig's tail. The action is illegal but emotionally satisfying, and it leaves no doubt. The umbrella is not just a passive relic, it is a working wand reassembled in secret and wielded with protective fury. Hagrid's use of the umbrella also speaks volumes about his relationship with the rules of the magical world. He is not reckless, he uses magic only when necessary and almost always to protect or comfort others. When he lights a fire in the hut or gives Harry a birthday cake, he is acting out of kindness, not rebellion. But the umbrella itself is a quiet rebellion, a sign that he has not accepted the ministry's judgment as final. He knows he was wronged, and rather than bow to that injustice, he has found a way to reclaim what was taken from him. There is a tenderness in the way Hagrid uses the umbrella, and this reveals something essential about him. Though he is rough around the edges, and though his size and strength often intimidate, his heart is gentle. The pink umbrella, often mocked, mirrors this contradiction. It is a strange fusion of power and softness, just like Hagrid himself. Every time he uses it, he is not just casting a spell, he is asserting his identity as a wizard, a status denied to him on paper, but never in spirit. J.K. Rowling never explicitly confirms that the umbrella contains the remains of Hagrid's wand, but the clues are there for those who look. The logic is simple. Hagrid performs magic with it. He never carries a visible wand. And in a world where unregistered magic is heavily regulated, the only explanation is that he has disguised a forbidden item inside a harmless one. "I shouldn't have done that," he says, sheepishly after turning Dudley into a pig. "I told myself I wouldn't. But it was a good joke, eh?" His remorse is genuine, but so is the pride. He's not sorry he still has magic. He's sorry he used it in anger. The pink umbrella tells a story of survival. It is a relic of a broken education, a condemned past, and a hope that refused to die. In a way, it is more powerful than many polished wands. It carries memory, defiance, and purpose. It is not just a tool, it is a legacy built by a boy who grew into a man on the margins of magical society yet never stopped believing in his own worth. When Hagrid escorts Harry to Diagon Alley for the first time, the umbrella is never far from his side. It is there when he retrieves Harry's vault key, when he buys Hedwig, and when he faces down an insolent Draco Malfoy in Madame Malkin's. It is there, silent and unassuming, in every major moment of Harry's introduction to the wizarding world. It is fitting that this strange object is among the first magical items Harry sees in action. Through it, Harry learns not just about magic, but about the people who have been shaped and scarred by it. The Ministry of Magic, with all its bureaucracy and rigid rules, would consider Hagrid's umbrella an illegal wand, but to Harry and to the readers who come to love the gentle half-giant, it is something else entirely. It is proof that magic cannot be fully destroyed, even when wands are snapped and students expelled, even when reputations are ruined. The core of a person's magic, their intention, their heart, can remain. In the world of Harry Potter, where wands choose the wizard and power is often tied to bloodlines or education, Hagrid's pink umbrella is a quiet counterpoint. It does not choose him, he creates it. He salvages what little he has and builds something new. This is the true magic of the umbrella, not in the spells it casts, but in what it represents: resilience, kindness, and the refusal to be erased. It is easy to overlook such a strange item in a world filled with invisibility cloaks, Horcruxes, and the Elder Wand. But the umbrella is just as significant. It is not ancient or fabled, but it holds a unique place in the magical world. It is not coveted by dark wizards or stored in ministry vaults, but it belongs to someone who has suffered and survived. That makes it a true artifact, not of power, but of meaning. In the final battle at Hogwarts, Hagrid fights not with spells, but with courage. Yet one cannot help but wonder if the umbrella was with him that night, tucked somewhere beneath his coat. Whether or not it was used, its presence would have spoken volumes. The boy who was expelled returned as a protector. The man they tried to silence stood tall, pink umbrella and all, defending the castle that once cast him out. And in that moment, the umbrella was no longer just a broken wand. It was a symbol of something far greater, of loyalty, of second chances, and of the enduring belief that magic belongs to everyone who dares to love it. Number 25. The Monster Book of Monsters. The Monster Book of Monsters was never just a textbook. It was a beast disguised as a source of knowledge, a snarling reminder that the magical world didn't care to be gentle, even when wrapped in parchment and bound in leather. Officially titled The Monster Book of Monsters, the book first made its savage entrance into Harry Potter's life during his third year at Hogwarts, as he embarked on the study of care of magical creatures. It was a new subject taught by a new professor, none other than Rubeus Hagrid, the gentle half-giant whose idea of safe differed dramatically from the ministry's standards, and so, as if to match Hagrid's unique perspective on dangerous creatures, his chosen textbook came with fangs and claws. From the very moment Harry received the book, delivered along with a rather alarming warning from the proprietor of Flourish and Blots, it was clear this was no ordinary manual. The bookstore had been turned into a battlefield, books leaping from shelves, snarling and snapping at fingers and ankles. One had to wrestle the book into submission just to get it into a bag. Mr. Flourish had to keep the remaining copies tied with thick belts, a method that still didn't entirely ensure safety. "I don't know why we even stock that thing," he muttered to a concerned customer. It was a foreshadowing, a clear signal that this year's education would be anything but ordinary. Harry's own copy, sent to him by mail, arrived already gnashing. The book skittered across his bed at the leaky cauldron, snapping at air and bumping into walls. To keep it from destroying his belongings, Harry had no choice but to bind it shut with a belt, an act that resembled taming a feral animal more than handling coarse materials. It was his first encounter with the idea that magical knowledge often came with sharp teeth, literally, and demanded submission before it could be absorbed. When Harry and his classmates arrived for their first Care of Magical Creatures class, many were still nursing scratches or had their books locked in cages. Hagrid, beaming with excitement, asked cheerily, "Did you like your books?" The class responded with incredulous stares and muttered complaints. Hagrid, unfazed, merely chuckled and revealed the secret to calming the creature. "You've got to stroke 'em." It sounded ridiculous, but it worked. As Harry experimentally brushed his fingers along the book's spine, the leather seemed to shiver, the pages relaxed, and the snapping stopped. The beast became a book once more. It was a peculiar moment, half comedic, half symbolic, showing that in the magical world, respect and patience could subdue even the wildest forms of knowledge. This detail, seemingly minor, revealed a deeper layer of wizarding pedagogy. Not all learning came through quiet reading or quills on parchment. Some lessons had to be wrestled with physically. The magical world required adaptability, a willingness to approach even the most frightening elements with curiosity and control. The Monster Book of Monsters was a living metaphor for magical education itself, dangerous if mishandled, revealing if approached with care. The book's aggressive behavior wasn't a random enchantment. According to some rumors, it was originally created by Eduardus Lima, a slightly mad magizoologist who believed that readers should physically experience the temperament of the creatures they study. He imbued the book with protective enchantments and a bit of Krupp DNA, hence the biting. While the book was eventually mass-produced for Hogwarts curriculum, its origins hinted at a chaotic fusion between magic and biology, another reminder that magic often blurred the lines between living and non-living, knowledge and danger. Though it was meant as a textbook, the Monster Book of Monsters was rarely used for reading. Most students, once they had managed to calm it, still refused to open it unless absolutely necessary. In fact, only Hermione Granger, naturally, read it thoroughly, managing to summarize entire chapters in her notes. Ron Weasley, on the other hand, simply avoided the book entirely, preferring to ask Hermione for help. He referred to it as the Thing and made sure to never unlock the belt around its middle. Despite its feral nature, the book was not merely a novelty. It did contain valuable information. Within its pages were detailed descriptions of creatures like the manticore, the nundu, and the lethifold, beasts too dangerous to encounter in real life. The book had an unnerving way of growling softly when describing certain monsters, as though remembering them. It was enchanted to simulate an atmosphere of danger, perhaps to prepare young witches and wizards for the unpredictability of real-world encounters. There was also an unspoken lesson in how the students handled the book. Draco Malfoy, for example, once attempted to stun it rather than stroke it, boasting that he could dominate anything dangerous. The result was predictable. His book retaliated with unexpected force, tearing part of his robe and leaving tooth marks on his wand. It was a moment of poetic justice, revealing that arrogance was a liability when dealing with magical knowledge. The book demanded humility, not aggression. Harry's relationship with the book, though initially cautious, mirrored his overall evolution as a wizard. He learned to respect its quirks and limitations, just as he came to understand the complexities of the magical world. In a way, the book was an extension of Hagrid's philosophy, that magical creatures, no matter how frightening, deserved understanding, not fear. Hagrid once said, "You've got to know how to approach 'em." That sentiment applied equally to the Monster Book of Monsters and to the hippogriffs, thestrals, and even dragons they would later encounter. The book appeared only briefly in the series, yet it left a lasting impression. It became a symbol of Hogwarts' unorthodox approach to learning, where even a textbook could attack if not handled properly. In the Muggle world, books are passive sources of knowledge. In the Wizarding world, even the act of reading could be a magical trial. It was one of the many subtle distinctions that separated the mundane from the extraordinary. Over time, the book came to represent more than just a peculiar Hogwarts anecdote. Collectors of magical literature began seeking out first-edition copies, those most likely to still bite. Some found in its pages hidden spells, marginalia from previous owners, and even scribbled warnings like, "Do not read aloud the third paragraph on page 73. These additions gave the book a haunted quality, as if it carried the spirits of past students within it. There were also whispers among older wizards that the book was a test in disguise, that it wasn't about magical creatures at all, but about the reader. Those who managed to tame the book proved themselves worthy of learning. Those who couldn't, well, perhaps weren't cut out for the unpredictability of the magical world. This interpretation was never confirmed, but it lingered in the air much like the scent of dragonhide and ink that clung to the book's spine. Fred and George Weasley, ever the mischief makers, once re-enchanted their copy to sing whenever someone tried to open it. The tune was an obnoxious wailing chorus of, "I'm a monster, I'll bite your face." They claimed it was to prevent anyone from borrowing it without permission, but really it was just another layer of chaos added to an already chaotic object. Even the professors had to admit it was clever. Yet for all its antics, the Monster Book of Monsters was quietly doing its job. It prepared the students for unpredictability. It taught them how to react when plans failed and how to calm a living storm. It taught patience, courage, and a kind of magical empathy. And those lessons, though never listed on a syllabus, were some of the most important ones Hogwarts had to offer. In a world where books could bite and staircases could move, Hogwarts never let its students become passive observers. Everything was alive, everything demanded interaction. The Monster Book of Monsters was just one of many enchanted tools that blurred the lines between the known and the unknown, the safe and the dangerous. But unlike many magical artifacts, it asked something simple in return: a gentle hand, a calm heart, and the willingness to see beyond the fangs. Number 26, the magical tent. The tent first appears in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire as part of the Weasleys' journey to the Quidditch World Cup. Arthur Weasley borrows it from his ministry colleague Perkins. To the naked muggle eye, the tent looks barely functional, a shabby old thing with patches on the canvas and a sagging roof. But stepping inside is like crossing the threshold into another reality. The interior reveals a cozy, fully furnished space, complete with bunk beds, a kitchen, and even a bathroom. It's not merely an enchanted shelter, it's a triumph of magical engineering. For Harry, who had spent most of his life in the cupboard under the stairs, the experience was otherworldly. "This is the best tent I've ever been in," he said in awe. This moment plants the seed of what the tent truly symbolizes, the quiet brilliance of magical practicality. Years later, that same tent would resurface under vastly different circumstances. During the trio's fugitive journey in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, it becomes their only constant, a fragile sanctuary in an increasingly hostile world. What once was used to enjoy a spectacle of magical sport now becomes a hideout, a temporary refuge from Death Eaters and the shadow of Voldemort's tyranny. That transformation gives the tent an almost sacred status. It is both time machine and time capsule, reminding Harry and Hermione of a world that used to be filled with joy, even as they crouch within its magically expanded walls, plotting their next desperate move. The tent, sustained by extension charms and undetectable. Extension charms is a marvel of spellcraft. It defies Muggle physics and logic. Its greatest strength lies not in its enchantments, but in its symbolism. It encapsulates the essence of wizardry, how magic can elevate even the most mundane object into something extraordinary. The outside remains ragged, reminding us of limitations and perception. The inside, however, whispers a secret only the initiated can hear, that the real magic lies not in the flashy exterior, but in the hidden depth. While Harry, Ron, and Hermione use the tent to evade capture and survive in the wilderness, its presence also marks the deterioration of their once secure lives. When they first set up camp in the Forest of Dean, the tent is where they lick their wounds after barely escaping the Ministry. It's where they nurse Ron after he splinches himself during apparition. It's where the Horcrux locket slowly eats away at their unity. The tent becomes more than shelter. It becomes a crucible. Every moment of tension, doubt, and breakdown occurs within its enchanted walls. The magic that stretches this space does not stretch time or ease pain, and so the tent becomes a stage for emotional unraveling. The most poignant example of the tent's psychological weight comes when Ron leaves. Frustrated by their lack of progress and the influence of the Horcrux, he storms out, leaving Harry and Hermione behind. The tent doesn't prevent the fracture, it absorbs it. It holds the echo of Ron's absence, his sleeping bag left unrolled. Hermione's silent tears in the corner, her breath visible in the cold air, reflect the tent's uncanny ability to magnify emotions. Its physical size is irrelevant when the emotional claustrophobia sets in. The tent doesn't simply house them, it reshapes their relationships. In one of the quietest yet most intimate moments of the series, Harry and Hermione share a dance inside the tent to the haunting tune of a Muggle song on the radio. It's a moment of forced levity amidst the despair. There's no magic in that moment, no spells or wands or charms, just two friends swaying in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by canvases that protect but do not comfort. The tent, once a marvel, has become a reminder of what they've lost and what they continue to fight for. But even in its grim utility, the tent is a marvel. It contains furniture, cooking utensils, a functioning stove, and beds, everything conjured or carried in to mimic home. That level of convenience is a testament to how deeply magic integrates into daily wizarding life. The tent is not unique in the magical world. Others use similar charms to transport rooms or objects in impossibly small containers. Hermione's bottomless beaded bag, for instance, contains books, clothes, a portrait of Phineas Nigellus Black, and even the tent itself. These enchanted objects form a quiet subculture of wizard survivalism, subtle, powerful, and essential. The idea that this tent, this artifact, was not built for war but for leisure adds to its tragic poetry. It was meant for festivals, family gatherings, shared laughter. And now it serves as a shield in a world that no longer recognizes peace. Its transformation from joyful shelter to wartime refuge mirrors the transformation of the wizarding world itself, from one of mischief and wonder to fear and oppression. There's irony in how the tent's mundane, outward appearance makes it safer. In a world where Death Eaters hunt by magical signatures, a humble-looking patchwork tent is less likely to draw attention. The very thing that would repulse a Muggle camper becomes a shield for the chosen one. Its unimpressive shell is the perfect camouflage. Magic, in its deepest form, is not about spectacle, it's about invisibility, about hiding in plain sight. The tent teaches this lesson over and over again. Its enchantments, however, are not foolproof. When snatchers begin to close in on them, the tent can only do so much. The protective charms Hermione casts around the campsite become more important than the tent itself. Yet it is always the tent they return to. It is always where they attempt to feel human again. Sleep, food, warmth, and conversation all occur within its flaps. It is not indestructible, but it is irreplaceable. A piece of borrowed equipment becomes the most consistent backdrop to their fractured journey. The contrast between its external and internal nature also plays into the series' recurring themes of misjudgment and assumption. Just as people judged Sirius Black, or Dobby, or even Snape based on appearances, the tent forces both characters and readers to challenge what they think they know. It's a running thread in Rowling's world. Things are rarely what they seem. The tent is the magical objectification of that principle. Its existence is not just clever, it's philosophical. During the Triwizard Tournament, the tent is used by Harry and the other champions as a waiting area before they face the dragons in the first task. At that time, it's a place of nervous energy where Cedric Diggory paces, Fleur Delacour clenches her jaw, and Victor Crumb stares silently ahead. Harry sits in the same tent both as a competitor and later as a fugitive. The two experiences could not be more different, yet the object remains the same. This strange continuity links key turning points in his journey. 2 tents, 1 artifact, 2 different Harrys. Magic in the wizarding world often walks the line between wonder and danger. Tent does the same. While it offers shelter, it also isolates. While it provides comfort, it does not cure. It is functional, but never emotional. For a world so steeped in storytelling, this object becomes a canvas onto which fear, memory, and survival are painted. It has no speaking lines, no wand, no will. but it shapes events more than many characters ever could. And then there's the thought that this object, remarkable as it is, was borrowed. Not made, not bought, but passed from one wizard to another. It was not built by Dumbledore or imbued with ancient magic. Its strength lies in the everyday brilliance of magical life. The tent is magical socialism in practice, shared utility that becomes personal salvation. Perkins might never know that his old camping tent hosted the boy who defeated Voldemort. The tent becomes a timekeeper, a silent witness to the days and weeks the trio spends in hiding. Its permanence in an impermanent journey is haunting. It reminds us how magic, even when used to expand walls and conjure light, cannot expand hope. That must come from within. The tent cannot heal the fracture in Ron and Hermione's friendship or take away Harry's nightmares, but it gives them a place to endure, to survive, to keep going. And when the war ends and the sun rises over Hogwarts once again, we never hear of the tent again. Perhaps it was returned to Perkins, perhaps it was discarded, or perhaps it still waits, folded in Hermione's bag, quietly holding the echoes of a journey that changed the world. If there is one object in the magical world that captured not just the brilliance of spells but the weight of the heart, it is that battered, brilliant tent. Number 27, Hermione's beaded bag. In the shadowed stillness of a forest under a protective enchantment, Hermione Granger reached into a beaded handbag no larger than a coin purse and produced a spacious tent, complete with beds and a kettle. In that moment, her magical artifact, unassuming in appearance yet formidable in power, shifted the course of the trio's journey. Woven from foresight and intellect, that handbag, charmed with the undetectable extension charm, was more than a clever container. It was an emblem of Hermione's genius and arguably one of the most consequential magical relics in the wizarding world. The handbag followed them through cold nights, scorching plains, and the unyielding tension of survival. "The tent?" Harry had once asked, startled when Hermione drew it from the tiny bag without hesitation. This tent wasn't just shelter. It was the boundary between order and chaos, between life and death. Inside they could regroup, plan, heal. It was in this enchanted space that Harry tried to understand the Hallows. Ron battled his guilt, and Hermione quietly shouldered the weight of their mission. And all of this was made possible because she prepared. Crafted with the undetectable extension charm, a spell so complex that it was closely monitored by the Ministry, Hermione's bag defied the ordinary. According to magical law, this charm was highly regulated due to the potential for smuggling or magical misuse. But Hermione did not employ it for mischief. Her purpose was noble, even visionary. Inside her tiny bag lived not only essentials but hope. Books such as Hogwarts, A History, and the tales of Beadle the Bard lay side by side with clothing and Muggle money. Beneath those items, hidden beneath layers of precaution, sat bottles of healing potions, vials of polyjuice, even the portrait of Phineas Nigellus Black, a link to the past, a whispering guide when none could be trusted. The sheer utility of this artifact cannot be overstated. When the trio fled Bill and Fleur's wedding under siege, Hermione had no time to pack, yet everything they needed was already with her. It wasn't just cleverness, it was strategy, the foresight of someone who anticipated not only the road ahead, but the sudden detours that could ruin them. "I've had it packed for days," she had admitted quietly, a testament to the quiet storm she embodied. Unlike the flashy heroism of a duel or the grandeur of the Elder Wand, Hermione's bag symbolized the kind of brilliance that saves lives when no one is watching. Within the forest's silence, the bag transformed again. It became a cabinet of remedies when Ron's arm was splinched. It became a library when Harry needed answers. In Deathly Hallows, J.K. Rowling writes, Hermione's bag produced bandages, essence of dittany, and a small container of pumpkin juice within seconds. No other magical artifact, save perhaps the Marauder's map or the invisibility cloak, played such a consistent and versatile role in the resistance against Voldemort. It did not require a wand to activate or allegiance to wield, just the courage and wisdom to plan ahead. But even beyond utility, the bag was personal. It contained Hermione's identity, the things she valued, the knowledge she carried, and the safety she provided to others. There is something profoundly symbolic in the fact that the brightest witch of her age didn't carry a sword or a shield, but a tiny purse filled with tools to outthink, outlast, and outmaneuver. Where others relied on brute strength, Hermione wielded knowledge. Where others reached for weapons, she reached into her bag. Consider the moment they broke into the Ministry of Magic. Everything depended on disguise, precision, and timing. From her bag came Polyjuice Potion. From her bag came their stolen identities. In that operation, success was measured by what Hermione had been able to fit into her enchanted container. Each item inside wasn't just a thing, it was a piece of the puzzle that, once assembled, made resistance possible. It's no exaggeration to say that without the bag, the trio might have failed before they'd even begun. Even the escape from Gringotts owes its existence to Hermione's artifact. After Bellatrix's vault exploded with the burning fury of multiplying treasures, Hermione's bag offered refuge for what little they could carry. Amid fire and dragon screams, Hermione once again proved that preparedness was as powerful as any spell. While the sword of Gryffindor captured imaginations and the Elder Wand dominated legends, it was her little bag that carried victory in fragments piece by piece across enemy lines. The portrait of Phineas Nigellus Black, a character both sardonic and unexpectedly useful, was hidden in her bag for weeks. Through him, they learned that Voldemort was seeking the Elder Wand, that Dumbledore's secrets were unraveling in real time. He spoke from inside the bag, his voice muffled by fabric and potions, a surreal but poignant metaphor for the past whispering to the present. This wasn't just magical convenience, it was magical cunning. Hermione's bag was a vault of alliances, a space where time, history, and strategy converged. Her actions and the artifact itself also raised ethical questions about magic and preparation. The charm used on the bag was technically illegal when applied by private citizens. Hermione bypassed that law, not to profit or deceive, but to save lives. This tension between magical law and moral necessity is a recurring theme in the series, and Hermione's bag became the quiet battleground where those lines blurred. In a world ruled by a corrupted ministry and a society divided by blood status, her artifact symbolized defiance, autonomy, and the ability to shape one's own path. In contrast to wands which require loyalty, or horcruxes which demand murder, the bag is gentle magic, an extension of the self, not a weapon, and yet it may have been the most dangerous item in their possession. With it, the trio remained mobile, hidden, fed, clothed, and informed. They could vanish from place to place, surviving on what she had tucked away. The bag made their mission sustainable. It made them ghosts in a war that hunted them relentlessly. Even after the war, one imagines the bag as a relic worth preserving. If the sword of Gryffindor rests in Hogwarts and the Elder Wand lies hidden with Dumbledore, then Hermione's bag, ordinary on the outside, infinite within, belongs in a museum of magical resistance. Not because it gleamed or glowed, but because it held a generation's fight within its folds. Its magic was not just in expansion, but in empowerment. And of course, the bag says something about Hermione herself. She is often dismissed as the sidekick, the helper, the brains behind the brawn, but her artifact shows that she was also the architect of survival. Harry had his courage, Ron his loyalty, but Hermione had the vision. "I'm hoping to do some good in the world," she had once declared, in Order of the Phoenix. And she did, not with glory, but with practicality. Her bag was never meant to impress, it was meant to endure. It also reflects a deeply feminine kind of strength that the series rarely celebrates so plainly. In a world filled with duels and dragons, Hermione's magic was domestic in form but revolutionary in function. The handbag, a symbol long relegated to fashion or utility, became in her hands a fortress, a lifeboat, a rebellion. It broke the mold of what magical artifacts should be. It was beautiful not because it shimmered, but because it worked. In the end, the bag was more than just a container. It was Hermione's world, shrunk down and stitched into fabric, then expanded by intention. It was the place where she kept their future, piece by delicate piece. An object so humble it would be ignored by most, yet so profound it arguably shaped the outcome of the war. Magic, after all, isn't just about power. Sometimes it's about being prepared, and no one was more prepared than Hermione Granger.